Today's Spotlight is brought to you in part by presenting sponsor, Busey Bank. Busey, your dream, our promise. If you're just tuning in, you're watching Spotlight. I'm your host, Jane Wynette, and joining me now are Chad Pettigo and Jack Flowers of Bridge Communities. So welcome.
Hello.
Hello, and happy to have you as always. We're going to start off with you, Chad. Talk a little bit about what Bridge Communities is doing in the community.
Absolutely. So Bridge Communities is the largest provider of transitional housing in DuPage County. What's a little known fact is we actually, our largest segment of housing is here in Naperville. So just a few miles from our thriving downtown Naperville, there are 9 apartment buildings that are housing homeless families and helping them to restore and get back on their feet and become self-sufficient.
Yeah, it's amazing when you don't realize that it's right here in Naperville, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we're seeking opportunities to give the family shelter and stability so that way they can begin to work on that path that will help them break free from the poverty and homelessness that they're dealing with.
And we're going to talk a little bit more in a while about some of the programs that you offer. But I'm going to start with you, Jack, as far as how you got involved with Bridge Communities. How did you find out about it, and what are you doing with them?
Well, St. Peter and Paul Catholic Church has been involved for about 25 years. I wasn't involved at that time. I've been involved for about 14 years. I went out to coffee with a good friend of mine after I was mentoring, and she asked, could you take over, Jack, which I did. Peter and Paul used to work with Catholic Charities, and Catholic Charities didn't provide the overall support that Bridge does, and they didn't own the apartment. So every time we had a family come in, we had to find an apartment. Okay. Very tough. At some point, I think it was about 22 years ago, Peter and Paul switched to Bridge. Bridge brings in a whole series of things that's from interviewing the potential clients, to education, to jobs, everything. And Peter and Paul has found it very, very rewarding to work with Bridge Communities.
Yeah. And what do you do specifically? What kinds of things do you like to do most in your volunteer work?
What I do is I run the program for our 4 apartments that we have at Peter and Paul. So big job, thankfully, I don't have is Peter and Paul's has monthly envelopes that it gives the parishioners to contribute. We have a pink envelope, and as a result of that, it takes about $4,500 a month for us to be able to support the program. I then work to make sure we've got mentors, that we have a monthly review with our mentors, how they're doing with their families, and I'm responsible for setting up the apartments. When a client comes in, they may have a lot of furniture, they may have nothing. I work with another organization called Sharing Connection, and I take a truck over there. They supply us from one thing to a whole apartment full. So I'm involved at the beginning and then watching what's happening during the 2 years with the client.
That's a big job. It's a big job. Chad, do all your volunteers take on quite that much responsibility?
Maybe not quite that much responsibility. Our mentors, as Jack mentioned, are the volunteers that are committed to 2 years of working with the family through their transitional period. And it's the linchpin to our success. Having someone sitting across the table from you once a week for a 2-year period allows you to really start to advance and make big changes. But we have many other volunteers that help support the organization through doing drives, collecting goods for the family or furniture in some instances, also helping with tutoring in our learning resource centers to help the kids when they're dealing with a very unstable environment to get back on track and become focused, and then helping with a number of programs across our different communities to support our families, whether that's through book drives, backpack drives, helping with resume building, employment, professional clothing, a number of different things.
Yeah, I think you touched on a couple of things there that I think are very interesting. I mean, I think one is that whole mentor piece and that accountability with that, and that sort of having somebody on your side who's a sense of constantness that's
Absolutely.
there. And I think the other thing that you talked about very much is that, we tend to sometimes forget that there are children involved in these situations. And so from some of the things that you're talking about with the backpacks and the ways to support them, lots of different programs.
And recognizing that Bridge Communities is specifically helping homeless families. So when families come to our program, providing them that shelter, we're not only helping the parent get back on their feet and be able to provide for their family, but we're creating a multi-generational change to break free from homelessness, because the children also have the opportunity to be housed, to learn better behaviors, to see what their parents are starting to model, and then hopefully avoid homelessness in their lifetime.
Yeah.
So that's a big change when you're affecting 2 generations at once.
Absolutely, absolutely. Jack, as you sort of reflect on the work that you've done, what do you find to be the most rewarding?
Well, I'll talk a little bit off of what Chad mentioned. Probably to me, I think for a 2-year period, we can really change the client somewhat. We can put her in a better position because we have about 4 or 5 goals. But the best thing in the program is that the reward for the kids. They have 2 years of stability. They have 2 years in the Naperville schools, which are very, very good. Mm-hmm. They have counseling, family or individual counseling, and they get a chance to associate with, we have 3 mentors for each family, so they get a chance to associate with kind of a figure that they don't have currently. Mm-hmm. I work with some of the clients after they leave the program. The biggest reward is seeing how the kids are.
Yeah, and I think you talk about that. I mean, one of the well-known things is the more positive adult role models you have in your life as a young person, the better off you'll be. And non-familial is very important, so that important role that you, as a mentor, and the other folks that are doing it are really playing, it's critical, right? So talk a little bit about some of the other, you talked a little bit about the employment, talk a little bit about some of the other programming.
Absolutely. So you're working specifically with homeless families for a 2-year period. That multi-generational approach I mentioned really matters. And we work with a number of community partners to make sure that we are providing everything we can for the families. New to our program over the past couple of years, we're doing 100% assessment with the homeless children to make sure they're getting everything they need, including partnerships with places like Project Help for parenting and for working with young children, Samaricare, working in the counseling centers and making sure that they have the best chance to survive. And one of the things that we really like to focus on is the fact that single parent, which is predominantly what our parents are in our program, it's a lot of work to make sure that you're providing both food on the table, stable housing, and transportation. So being able to have programs that are centered around holistically and healthy families during the 2-year period in our program is a big part of what we seek. So that way, as the families are exiting, they can provide better nutrition, better quality time, not just break free from homelessness, but become better families in the process.
Yeah, it's not just a roof over their head. It's really trying to set them up for success once they're able to transition beyond your program, right?
Exactly.
Are you able to fulfill all the needs that you see in the community?
Not even close, unfortunately. Yeah. So the homeless need in our community can often be ignored or unseen, and those unseen homeless families are just trying to keep ends together, staying in low-end motels, staying with friends, family, sleeping in their cars, even in the worst-case scenarios, or outside. So we receive about 2,000 or more calls per year of people looking for assistance. Of those, 40 to 50 families each year can be brought into our program. So we're barely scratching the surface, but those families that we are helping, especially as I mentioned here in Naperville, being our largest segment of housing, are really getting the opportunity to change their lives, and we want to help so many more in the future.
Yeah, well, I think certainly with volunteers and mentors like Jack, and I know the passion that you feel for the cause, Chad, I feel that we're going to continue to make good progress towards that.
Absolutely.
Ending homelessness. So thank you so much for coming. And if you would like to learn more about how you can support Bridge Communities, please go and visit their website. We're going to take a quick break. Don't go away. We're coming right back with more Spotlight.